madness. This is Sparta!
Someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam.
Welcome to the Midside. My name is Justin. 3 years after breaking into the mainstream with his adaptation of Frank Miller's 300, Zack Snyder adapted another iconic comic work, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen. While bringing another culturally significant piece of pop culture to the mainstream was a logical progression for Snyder, what makes the selection so insane is the vast thematic chasm between 300 and Watchmen, reflected in the opposing philosophies of their writers. The themes of the two stories are so diametrically opposed that Moore once even described 300 as wildly ahistoric, homophobic, and just completely misguided. Appropriately, the reaction to Snyder's Watchmen was equally as divided and divisive as Miller and Moore's beliefs. Many people heralded the movie as the most faithful adaptation of the graphic novel possible. Others decried it as a demonstration of Snyder's lack of understanding of the point of the graphic novel. To truly appreciate the movie, we have to accept that both these perspectives are wrong and dive deep into the key difference between the movie and the novel: their endings. In other words, in order to understand Zack Snyder's Watchmen, we must deconstruct the deconstruction. Moore's story starts with the death of a comedian. This choice is intentionally ironic, as in the end, the novel supports the comedian's "it's all a joke" nihilism.
Country's disintegrating. What's happened to America? What's happened to the American dream? It came true. You're looking at it.
Moore drives the comedian's worldview home by punctuating his story with two cruel jokes. The first is his mockery of the medium. After pages and pages of unraveling of an intricate mystery with philosophically and psychologically complex characters, the villain reveals his master stroke, and it's a fake giant psychic squid. And it's meant to scare the world into working together. And somehow it works. Moore is reducing the conventions of comic books, deus ex machina, and exaggerated heroes and villains, to absurdity in order to mock them. Notably, there's no commentary on Ozymandias' scheme. Instead, the other Watchmen all reluctantly agree to compromise with Ozymandias because he has morally checkmated them.
All the countries are unified and pacified. Can't get away with it. Will you expose me, undoing the peace millions died for? Kill me, risking subsequent investigation? Morally, you're in checkmate. Like Blake. Let's compromise. What? Logically, I'm afraid he's right. Exposing this plot, we destroy any chance of peace, dooming Earth to worse destruction. On Mars, you demonstrated life's value. If we would preserve life here, we must remain silent. Never tell anyone? We really have to buy this? Jesus, he was right. All we did was fail to stop him saving Earth. Jesus. How can humans make decisions like this? We're damned if we stay quiet. Earth's damned if we don't. Okay, count me in. We say nothing.
Ozymandias is now on equal moral ground with the other Watchmen, rendering any attempt to identify heroes and villains pointless, except for possibly one Watchman. As Rorschach walks out the door, Ozymandias mocks the resolute vigilante's refusal to compromise.
Now, what would you call that, I wonder? blotting out reality, perhaps.
This line could be seen as just a man mocking his polar opposite, except Dr. Manhattan kills Rorschach for his stubbornness, emphasizing how misguided the masked man is.
People must be told. Rorschach, you know I can't let you do that. Of course. Must protect Veidt's new utopia. One more body amongst foundations makes little difference. Well, what are you waiting for? Do it, Rorschach. Do it!
Moore finishes hammering his point home with his second cruel joke, the undermining of Ozymandias' victory. In the novel's epilogue, we learn that Rorschach's journal was found and will be published, implying the exposure of Ozymandias' worldwide deception. Moore purposely rendered his entire story pointless. All of the characters' actions were futile, as they ultimately negated each other.
Listen, once you figure out what a joke everything is, being the comedian's the only thing makes sense.
Rorschach's journal, October 12th, 1985. Dog carcass in alley this morning. Tire tread on burst stomach. This city's afraid of me. I've seen its true face.
Snyder's story starts and ends in the same place as Moore's, the comedian's death and the implied publication of Rorschach's journal. But with a few key changes, the director inverts the novel's meaning into supporting Rorschach's unwavering belief in right and wrong.
And all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."
The most notable change to the ending is the removal of the fake giant squid. Instead, Snyder makes Ozymandias' plan much more philosophically heinous.
You see, the comedian was right. Humanity's savage nature will inevitably lead to global annihilation. So in order to save this planet, I had to trick it with the greatest practical joke in human history.
Ozymandias' joke is the replication of Dr. Manhattan's power to make it look like Dr. Manhattan disintegrated several of the world's greatest cities as punishment for flirting with World War III. Just as with the squid in the novel, Ozymandias believes this tactic will scare the world into peace. However, unlike the novel, the other Watchmen do not accept this plan so easily.
A world united in a peace that had to be sacrificed.
No! You haven't idealized mankind, but you've deformed it. You've mutilated it. That's your legacy. That's the real practical joke.
Whereas Moore's ending posits that humanity's issue is its savage nature and thus all pursuit of values is pointless, Snyder's ending asserts that humanity's issue is that it treats the best of its kind as the worst of its kind, hindering its own ability to pursue values. Ozymandias turns the world's most powerful man, Dr. Manhattan, the story's only true superhero, into the villain. Snyder returns to this idea later in his career in Batman vs. Superman. To emphasize this point in Watchmen, he treats Rorschach's death differently than Moore did. Rorschach's refusal to compromise still leads to Dr. Manhattan killing him, but the death plays much more like a tragedy. Dr. Manhattan is complicit in Ozymandias' perversion of humanity by murdering the man who would defend him to the world. Rorschach's death is like the life that drove him insane. He's just not allowed to be good. This tragedy is driven home by Dan's reaction, which does not appear in the novel. And Snyder's most iconic visual addition, Rorschach's blood splatter resembling a Rorschach test, challenging the viewers to reflect on what they see. Some people see a pretty butterfly. I personally see an angel. These changes also shade the discovery and implied publication of Rorschach's journal in the epilogue differently. Now, instead of all the characters' actions negating each other, Rorschach is able to still undermine Ozymandias' perversion of humanity, punctuating the movie with a minor triumph.
Never compromise. Not even in the face of Armageddon.
By looking at these minor yet precise changes, we understand how Zack Snyder flipped the nihilism of the graphic novel on its head, and why some people say Snyder didn't understand the novel. However, if we accept that everything Snyder did was intentional, maybe it wasn't Snyder who didn't understand Moore's work. Maybe it was Moore who didn't understand his own work, or, at least, miscalculated with it. The key to understanding Moore's miscalculation is the controversial character of Rorschach. Moore showed him as the embodiment of the flaws within individualism. Snyder showed him as the vindication of individualism. And in the 2019 sequel series to Watchmen, executive producer Damon Lindelof showed Rorschach as the inspiration for a far-right white supremacist cult. Though seemingly extreme and absurd, Lindelof's take on Rorschach was actually pretty close to Moore's original intent with the character. Moore created Rorschach as a repudiation of Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism as shown through The Question and Mr. A, characters created by Steve Ditko, a known objectivist. In a BBC documentary about Ditko, Moore described Rorschach.
He has this ferocious moral integrity that has made him one of the most popular characters in the book. And obviously that ferocious moral drive and integrity, that was kind of my take upon Steve Ditko.
In a print interview, Moore critiqued objectivism. I have to say I found Ayn Rand's philosophy laughable. It was a white supremacist dreams of the master race burnt in an early 20th century form. Moore even saw Rorschach as connected to Batman and expected readers to dislike Rorschach for these similarities. I thought, what would Batman be like in the real world? And he'd be very much like Rorschach. He wouldn't have time for a girlfriend, friends, a social life, because he'd just be driven by getting revenge against criminals, dressed up as a bat for some reason. But I had forgotten that actually to a lot of comic book fans that smelling, not having a girlfriend, these are actually kind of heroic. So actually, sort of, Rorschach became the most popular character in Watchmen. I meant him to be a bad example. Due to his miscalculations, what Moore meant and what Moore got when he created Rorschach were two completely different things. No miscalculation is more extreme, however, than his underestimation of just how much individualism Americans have in their souls.
From my heart and from my hand, why don't people understand my intention?
Watchmen hit shelves in September of 1986, just when the rejection and upheaval of traditional American values and art crept into mainstream entertainment culture, a result of the shift of academia and the youth to the left in the 60s and 70s. John Hughes undermined the traditional social structure by showing that the difference between the alpha male and the beta male wasn't as large as people believed. The Karate Kid went a step further and showed the beta overcome the alpha, who was shown as a bully. Oliver Stone attacked American wealth with Wall Street, and American exceptionalism with a continued focus on the Vietnam War and Platoon, and Born on the 4th of July. John Carpenter portrayed American society and success as grimy and dangerous. America's love of rugged individualism, a wave that crested with the golden age of westerns in the 1950s, was squarely in the crosshairs in the 1980s. Then in 1988, John McTiernan made one of the greatest action movies of all time, Die Hard. In it, Bruce Willis's New York City policeman John McClane has to outwit and overpower European terrorist Hans Gruber on his own. In many ways, Gruber echoes the comedian and embodies the rejection and upheaval of American values.
Another American who saw too many movies as a child. Another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne, Rambo, Marshall Dillon.
McTiernan resolves the movie's conflict with a reinterpretation of the traditional Western standoff, a powerful declaration that America's love for rugged individualism would only die. Well, you get it.
John Wayne does not walk off into the sunset with Grace Kelly.
It's Gary Cooper, asshole.
Enough jokes.
You made a pretty good cowboy yourself, Hans.
Oh, yes. What was it you said to me before? Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Happy trails, Hans.
Alan Moore, an English national, did not account for the strength of this vein of Americanism when he created Rorschach. accidentally building a lightning rod for those people who shared, on some level, this American sense of rugged individualism. Snyder's adaptation of Watchmen, with its remixed ending, exists squarely in this space. I'm Justin Emblesneski. Thanks for stopping by the Midside. Happy trails, Alan!